The story begins at the moment everything appears to end, although the people across the table do not yet understand that this ending is not real. After 15 years inside a company that depends on work it barely understands, a quiet decision is made to remove the one person who knows where its foundations are buried. What looks like a routine dismissal is the first move in a collapse that has already been set in motion. The conference room is small, windowless, and carefully neutral, designed for conversations that must look polite while changing lives. Kira Jennings sits straight-backed in her chair, hands folded, listening as Marjorie Thompson explains that the company is restructuring. Denise from HR slides a folder across the table before Kira opens it, already knowing what it contains. Severance terms, standard language, clean endings. They speak slowly, choosing words that sound considerate while avoiding responsibility. Kira nods once calmly and thanks them for explaining. Her voice does not shake. There are no questions. The reaction is not what they expected, and relief flickers across Marjorie's face. They had prepared for anger, for pleading, for visible fear. Instead, they are given professionalism, which convinces them they are still in control. They ask her to return her access card by Friday. They explain that her team will be informed later that day. They say the decision is not personal. Kira listens, stands, and closes the folder without reading it. She has memorized every clause from similar exits she has witnessed over the years. This meeting is not new to her, only the timing is. As she walks back through the office corridors, engineers look up from their screens. Some smile, some avoid eye contact. The building hums with the steady confidence of a company that believes its future is secure. Through a glass wall, Kira sees the executive team reviewing revenue projections, pointing at charts built on systems she designed years earlier. No one looks up. Inside her office, Kira closes the door and sets the folder on her desk. She does not pack, she does not sit. She takes out her personal phone and sends a short message to a single contact. The reply comes back almost immediately. Plans are confirmed. Documents are ready, the timing is perfect. Kira finally sits down and opens her desk drawer, not to remove belongings, but to retrieve a slim notebook she has kept separate from company records. She checks one date, then another. Everything aligns. What the company believes is a clean removal is actually a delayed reaction. The work they assumed belonged to them has already moved beyond their reach. By the time Marjorie and Denise return to their day, confident the situation is resolved, the balance has already shifted. Kira remains in her office, composed and silent, fully aware that this was never the end of her story. It was only the moment when everyone else stopped paying attention. By the afternoon, the announcement spreads through the building exactly as planned. A short internal email confirms that Kira Jennings will be leaving by the end of the week as part of restructuring. No explanation. No acknowledgement of her role. Just a closing sentence wishing her well in future endeavors. The message is efficient and final, designed to prevent questions. Kira does not respond to anyone who stops by her office. She listens, thanks them briefly, and returns to her desk. By the end of the day, her calendar has been stripped of future meetings. Access to certain internal systems quietly disappears. The company moves quickly when it believes someone is no longer necessary. That evening, Kira leaves the building later than usual. She does not take files or devices. She carries only her personal phone and the same notebook. Once outside, she pauses long enough to send another message, this time more detailed. A confirmation arrives within minutes. A private meeting is set for the next evening, away from the company's headquarters and far from anyone who might recognize her. At home, Kira reviews documents she has already organized weeks earlier. Development logs, timestamps, records of work completed on personal equipment outside company hours. Every file is labeled clearly, stored redundantly, and cross-verified. There is no rush. This process was finished long before today. The following morning, Marjorie holds a leadership briefing. Kira's name comes up only once, attached to a list of responsibilities that will be reassigned. No one mentions the architecture behind the company's flagship system. No one asks who understands it well enough to maintain it. They assume documentation is enough. Meanwhile, Kira attends her scheduled exit meetings with calm precision. She answers questions directly and provides thorough handover notes. Nothing is missing. Nothing is concealed. The completeness of her cooperation reinforces the belief that she poses no risk. Late that afternoon, Kira receives a call from an unfamiliar number. She does not answer. A voicemail follows, brief and professional, asking to confirm a dinner meeting. She deletes the message after listening once. The details are already written down. On Thursday, she meets Gregory Sullivan in a private dining room reserved under a different name. There is no small talk. He acknowledges what has happened. She confirms it was expected. Papers are reviewed, terms are restated, and timelines are aligned. Both understand the value of silence. Before leaving, Gregory confirms one final detail. The announcement will go live Monday morning. Kira nods once. That is exactly when it needs to happen. On Friday, Kira returns her access card, laptop, and phone. HR thanks her for her professionalism. Marjorie wishes her luck. As Kira walks out of the building for the last time, no one notices that the system they rely on no longer belongs to them in the way they believe it does. The company closes the week thinking a problem has been removed. Kira closes it knowing the real consequences have not even begun. The weakness inside the company does not appear suddenly. It has existed for years, buried under assumptions and ignored checks. Kira confirms it on Saturday morning while reviewing one final document, not because she doubts it, but because precision matters now more than ever. The patent file the company believed covered its core system is incomplete. Critical attribution was never finalized. What was treated as a formality was postponed, then forgotten. Kira remembers the moment she first noticed it weeks earlier. A misdirected internal email had landed in her inbox late one night, a discussion between legal and senior leadership about accelerating ownership claims before restructuring. The language was vague, confident, and careless. It assumed compliance would resolve everything. That email was the reason she began checking records quietly. The deeper she looked, the clearer the gap became. The original algorithm had been implemented inside the company, but the refinements that made it scalable, efficient, and commercially dominant were never registered correctly. Those improvements were developed outside office hours, on personal equipment, and documented separately. The company relied on them daily without realizing how exposed it was. On Monday morning, the announcement is released exactly as scheduled. Precision Systems issues a press statement confirming the acquisition of exclusive licensing, rights to a patented processing framework, and naming Kira Jennings as its creator and new executive lead. The wording is deliberate. The ownership is explicit. There is no ambiguity. Within minutes, internal alerts trigger inside Kira's former company. Legal flags the announcement. Finance notices the market reaction. Executives begin reading the release line by line, trying to locate the mistake. There is none. By mid-morning, Kira receives her first message from a former colleague. It is short and urgent, asking what is happening. She does not reply. Another message follows from someone higher up, requesting a call to clarify a misunderstanding. She forwards it to her legal counsel without comment. Inside the company, systems engineers are pulled into emergency reviews. They are asked to confirm whether the patented components are essential to current operations. The answer comes back faster than leadership expects. The product cannot function at scale without them. At noon, the general counsel requests an immediate meeting with the executive team. Contracts are pulled. Employment agreements are reread. The oversight becomes undeniable. What they assumed was protected is not. What they dismissed as replaceable is now named, licensed, and controlled elsewhere. Kira spends the day onboarding at Precision Systems without incident. Meetings are direct. Decisions are efficient. No one questions her authority or asks her to justify her presence. The contrast is sharp but unspoken. By late afternoon, her phone vibrates again. This time it is a direct message from the CEO of her former company. The tone has changed. The language is no longer procedural. It asks for urgency. Kira locks her screen and continues walking toward her next meeting. The collapse is not loud yet, but it has already started, and it cannot be stopped without her consent. By Tuesday morning, the situation inside Kira's former company is no longer contained. What began as internal concern has shifted into visible disruption. Meetings are canceled, then rescheduled under new titles. Teams are pulled off routine work and reassigned without explanation. No formal announcement is made, but everyone senses something is wrong. Legal begins reconstructing the development history of the core system. Emails are searched. Old repositories are reopened. Archived approvals are reviewed line by line. The problem is not what they find, but what they cannot. There is no clean ownership trail for the refinements now named in the patent announcement. Every shortcut taken over the years is suddenly exposed. Midday, a closed-door meeting takes place between legal, finance, and executive leadership. The conclusion is direct and uncomfortable. Without licensing rights, the company is operating its flagship product on technology it does not fully control. Any attempt to challenge the patent would require proving that the refinements were developed under company ownership. The documentation does not support that claim. At Precision Systems, Kira receives updates through counsel, not through conversation. Each message confirms what she already knows. The patent has been reviewed. The filings are solid. Timestamps are verified. There is no overlap with company equipment or work hours. The protections are complete. In the afternoon, Kira's former team begins reaching out privately. They are being asked questions they cannot answer. Leadership wants timelines, dependencies, and explanations that were never fully documented because the system was trusted to function, not examined. Kira responds to none of them directly. Instead, Precision Systems sends formal offers to each engineer by the end of the day. By evening, the market reacts again. Analysts begin speculating publicly about exposure risks. The company's stock dips further. Clients request reassurance calls. Sales teams are instructed to delay responses until leadership aligns on messaging. No message is ever aligned. Late that night, Kira receives another call request, this time marked urgent. It is declined. A follow-up email arrives instead, stripped of corporate tone. It asks for a conversation before irreversible damage is done. Wednesday morning brings escalation. An emergency board session is scheduled. External advisors are brought in. The cost of rebuilding the system from scratch is estimated. The timeline stretches into years. The financial impact is severe. At Precision Systems, Kira leads her first closed strategy session. The discussion is not emotional. It is logistical, licensing structures, transition pacing, client outreach. Every move is calculated to apply pressure without direct confrontation. By the time the former company's board adjourns, the conclusion is unavoidable. There are only two options left: negotiate or bleed slowly while competitors advance. Kira does not wait for the choice to be communicated. She already knows which path they will try first. The request finally comes in writing, formal and carefully worded, sent through the company's legal department rather than directly from leadership. It proposes a meeting to discuss potential alignment and mutual clarification of rights. The language avoids the word licensing, but the intent is clear. They need access to what they no longer control. Kira reviews the message once and forwards it to Precision Systems' legal team with a short note confirming availability under their conditions. The response goes out an hour later. The meeting will take place off-site, with legal representation present on both sides. No informal discussions, no private assurances. Inside the former company, the delay feels dangerous. Each hour without a resolution increases exposure. Engineers report performance concerns they cannot fix. Client support teams struggle to answer technical questions. Leadership instructs everyone to maintain normal operations while privately preparing for disruption. The meeting is scheduled for Thursday afternoon. When the representatives arrive, they expect tension, resistance, and possibly negotiation leverage. What they find instead is structure. Precision Systems opens by outlining the patent scope, the legal basis for ownership, and the terms required for continued use. There is no debate over validity. That issue has already been settled. The former company's counsel attempts to argue intent, long-term employment, implied ownership. The response is immediate and factual. Intent is not ownership. Employment does not override documented development boundaries. Implied claims do not survive legal review. When numbers are presented, the room goes quiet. The licensing cost is high enough to damage margins immediately. The acknowledgement clause requires public recognition of authorship. The representatives hesitate, request time, and ask whether the terms are flexible. They are told flexibility depends on timing. Every delay increases cost. That evening, leadership reconvenes internally. Pride collides with necessity. Some argue they should rebuild. Others point out that rebuilding requires knowledge that has already left the building. The engineers who understood the system best have not returned messages all day. By Friday morning, resignations begin landing quietly in HR inboxes. Not public, not coordinated, just enough to signal that confidence inside the company is breaking. Leadership realizes the situation is no longer theoretical. Kiera spends the day reviewing onboarding progress at Precision Systems. Her former team accepts their offers one by one. Their start dates are aligned. There is no celebration, just confirmation. Late that night, another message arrives from the former CEO, shorter than before. It asks whether the acknowledgement clause is truly necessary. Kiera does not respond. The answer will come through lawyers, along with consequences they can no longer avoid. The company delays its response longer than advised. Internal debate stretches through the weekend, driven less by strategy than by resistance to admitting fault. Legal warns that silence weakens their position. Finance warns that uncertainty is already being priced into contracts. Leadership hesitates anyway. On Monday morning, Precision Systems moves first. A follow-up notice is sent, formal and unemotional, confirming that licensing terms will increase if no agreement is reached within 48 hours. The language is precise. The deadline is real. Inside the former company, the effect is immediate. Another emergency session is called. Updated projections are shared. Without licensing, continued use of the system exposes the company to injunction risk. With licensing, profit margins shrink sharply. Either outcome damages credibility. Engineers report new issues as system loads increase. Temporary fixes buy hours, not solutions. Support tickets escalate. One major client requests written assurance that service continuity is guaranteed beyond the quarter. No one can provide it. Midday, the board demands a direct conversation with Kiera. The request does not go through legal. It comes through an executive assistant, informal and urgent, asking for 10 minutes to clear misunderstandings. The request is denied within minutes. All communication must remain formal. That afternoon, Precision Systems releases a second announcement, smaller than the first but no less damaging. It confirms active discussions with multiple firms interested in licensing the patented framework. No names are mentioned, but the message is understood. Access will not be exclusive. By evening, the former company's stock drops again. Analysts begin openly questioning leadership competence. Internally, blame sharpens. Legal points to management. Management points to legal. HR is instructed to prepare contingency plans. On Tuesday morning, the company finally responds. They agree to negotiate licensing, but request modified terms, specifically removal of public acknowledgement. The counterproposal is sent early, framed as a compromise. The reply comes back before noon. The acknowledgement clause is non-negotiable. Without it, there is no license. The message circulates through leadership in silence. The cost is no longer just financial. Public recognition would expose the internal decision that led to this crisis. It would confirm that the company removed the person who built what it depended on. By late afternoon, 2 senior executives submit their resignations, officially unrelated, internally understood. Kiera receives a status update at the end of the day. Negotiations are stalling. Pressure is increasing. Interest from third parties is growing. She closes the report and schedules her next meeting. The deadline is approaching, and this time the company will not be able to delay its choice. Wednesday arrives without resolution. The deadline set by Precision Systems expires at noon. No agreement is signed. No acknowledgement is accepted. At 12:30, the legal position changes automatically. The former company is now operating without protection. Within hours, Precision Systems Counsel files formal notices to preserve rights. They are not injunctions yet, but they are enough to unsettle clients and regulators. The message is clear: time has run out. Inside the former company, panic replaces argument. Emergency calls go unanswered as executives try to manage several crises at once. Sales teams are instructed to pause new contracts. Existing clients request written clarification about continued use of the system. Legal refuses to provide guarantees. By mid-afternoon, the board removes the CEO from negotiations entirely. Control shifts to an interim committee. The tone of communication changes immediately. The next message sent to Precision Systems drops all resistance. The company agrees to licensing, acknowledgement included, and asks only for time to prepare a public statement. The response comes back within the hour. Time is no longer available. The acknowledgement must be released with the agreement. Delay will increase cost. As leadership debates how to frame the admission, the news leaks anyway. An industry publication releases a short article confirming that the patented framework underlying the company's flagship product was developed by Kira Jennings, now operating under Precision Systems. The source is unnamed. The damage is immediate. Clients react first. 2 major accounts request early termination discussions. A third freezes expansion plans. Competitors seize the moment, quietly offering alternatives. Late that afternoon, HR sends out a company-wide email announcing leadership changes effective immediately. No details are given. No explanation follows. Employees begin updating profiles and reaching out to recruiters. At Precision Systems, Kira meets with her full team for the first time. There is no speech. She assigns priorities, confirms timelines, and authorizes expansion of licensing talks. Momentum replaces uncertainty. That evening, the former company submits its final acceptance. All terms are approved. The acknowledgement will be public. The license will be signed at the original rate, plus penalties for delay. Kira reviews the agreement line by line and authorizes execution. At 8:00 p.m., the joint statement is released. It confirms the licensing arrangement and names Kira Jennings as the creator of the core framework powering the former company's product. The language is restrained. The implication is not. By the end of the night, the narrative has shifted completely. What began as a quiet dismissal is now an industry event. The company that believed it could erase one person's value has been forced to publish it instead. And this time, there is no revision clause. The morning after the announcement, the impact becomes measurable. Markets react before executives can issue explanations. The former company's stock opens lower and continues falling through the first hour. Analysts release rapid updates, no longer speculating but citing confirmed risk. The licensing agreement prevents immediate shutdown, but it exposes how dependent the company truly is. Inside the building, no one pretends anymore. Meetings are not about strategy, but survival. Department heads are asked to prepare reports explaining how operations will continue if licensing terms change again. No one can answer with confidence. Clients begin calling Precision Systems directly. They want clarity. They want guarantees. They want to know who controls the technology now. Each inquiry is logged, acknowledged, and scheduled. No promises are made yet. Silence becomes leverage. By midday, internal communication at the former company breaks down. Different departments receive conflicting instructions. Engineers are told to continue development while legal warns them not to modify anything covered by the patent. Progress stalls completely. Kira receives an update from her legal team confirming what she expected. The licensing agreement gives Precision Systems full authority to renegotiate terms in the future. The current deal only prevents immediate collapse. It does not restore trust. In the afternoon, an internal memo leaks. It confirms that leadership knew about the patent gap months earlier and chose to proceed anyway, assuming the risk was manageable. The document spreads quickly across industry channels. Commentary shifts from oversight to negligence. The board responds by announcing an independent review. It satisfies no one. Investors demand accountability. Employees demand clarity. Neither is provided. At Precision Systems, Kira authorizes the first wave of external licensing discussions. The terms are firm. The pricing is consistent. The demand is higher than projected. What was once a defensive move becomes a growth engine. By evening, the former company's interim leadership requests another meeting. This time, the tone is cooperative. They ask about long-term stability, future access, and the possibility of preferred status. The request is acknowledged, not accepted. Kira ends the day reviewing reports from her team. Implementation is ahead of schedule. Performance benchmarks exceed initial projections. What once existed quietly inside another company is now evolving openly under her direction. Late that night, she receives a final message from someone still inside the former company. It is not a negotiation. It is not an apology. It simply says that no one realized how much depended on her until she was gone. Kira does not reply. The realization arrived too late to change anything now. By the end of the week, the former company enters a phase it cannot reverse. The licensing agreement keeps its systems running, but it strips away the illusion of control. Every update now requires approval. Every modification risks violation. What once moved quickly is now restrained by dependency. Internally, leadership fractures further. The independent review announced days earlier expands in scope, pulling in external auditors and legal advisors. Interview requests go out to engineers, managers, and legal staff. Everyone is asked the same question in different forms. When did you know, and what did you do about it? The answers do not align. Several senior managers are placed on administrative leave without explanation. The silence surrounding their removal confirms what official statements avoid. Responsibility is being reassigned quietly. At the same time, clients accelerate their decisions. One major account announces a migration plan. Another requests a temporary extension while exploring alternatives. The former company's sales pipeline contracts visibly. Forecasts are revised downward again. Precision Systems capitalizes without spectacle. Kira approves limited licensing to select partners, not competitors, shaping the market deliberately. The terms emphasize stability, not speed. Each agreement reinforces the same fact. Control has changed hands permanently. Midweek, the former company's board makes a public move. The CEO's resignation is announced, effective immediately. The statement frames it as a transition. The market reads it as admission. The reaction is swift. Shares dip, then stabilize at a lower level. Analysts publish revised outlooks that no longer assume recovery. The company's position shifts from leader to participant. Inside Precision Systems, Kira holds a brief internal update. She confirms priorities and timelines. No one asks about the former company. The focus has already moved forward. That afternoon, a request arrives from a regulatory body seeking clarification on long-term system integrity. Precision Systems responds formally, providing documentation and assurances. The former company is copied on the correspondence. The contrast is visible. Late in the day, Kira receives a summary of the independent review's early findings. The oversight was documented internally, flagged, and ignored. The decision to proceed was deliberate. The removal of Kira's position was part of the same sequence. The report has not yet been released, but its direction is clear. As evening approaches, Kira authorizes preparation for a public briefing scheduled for the following week. Not an announcement. A clarification. The industry is watching, and silence is no longer necessary. The collapse has slowed, but it has not stopped. What remains now is the reckoning, and everyone involved understands it will not be quiet. The request that follows is no longer framed as negotiation. It is framed as necessity. Late Sunday night, the former company's interim leadership submits a formal proposal asking for extended licensing security, fixed pricing guarantees, and limited public exposure going forward. The document is detailed, urgent, and restrained. It reads like something written, by people who now understand how little room they have left. Precision Systems does not respond immediately. The delay is intentional. By Monday morning, rumors begin circulating that other firms are finalizing agreements. The former company notices the timing and escalates internally, instructing counsel to prepare for worst-case outcomes. By midday, Kira's legal team replies, "The proposal is acknowledged, but key conditions are rejected. Pricing will remain flexible. Public attribution cannot be limited. Future access will depend on compliance and market conditions." The message ends without invitation. Inside the former company, the response triggers a second emergency board meeting. The discussion is no longer about recovery. It is about containment. The independent review's draft findings are shared confidentially. The language is careful but damaging. Decisions were made despite known risks. Warnings were documented. Accountability is unavoidable. That afternoon, the board authorizes disclosure planning. Executives argue over sequencing, timing, and wording. Each version attempts to soften responsibility. None succeed. Meanwhile, Precision Systems announces the expansion of its licensing framework. The announcement is factual and brief. It confirms interest from multiple sectors and outlines future integration plans. The former company is not mentioned. The omission is noted. By Tuesday morning, employees inside the former company learn about the draft review through unofficial channels. Anxiety spreads. Questions surface that leadership cannot answer. Several mid-level managers resign without waiting for formal outcomes. At Precision Systems, Kira approves the next phase of deployment. Performance benchmarks are exceeded again. The system scales cleanly. What was once constrained by internal politics now moves freely. Late Tuesday, a final message arrives from the former company's board chair. It requests a private conversation, not about terms, but about resolution. The language suggests acceptance rather than resistance. Kira reviews the message and forwards it to counsel with a single instruction. All discussions remain documented. By the end of the day, the board chair sends another message confirming willingness to release the full review publicly once finalized. It is a concession meant to restore credibility. Kira closes the file without replying. The reckoning has already passed the point where private conversations can change outcomes. What remains now will unfold in public, and everyone involved knows there will be no revisions this time. The independent review is released on Wednesday morning without warning. There is no press conference, no prepared defense, only a document posted quietly on the company's website and immediately mirrored by industry outlets. Within minutes, analysts begin highlighting sections that confirm what many suspected. The oversight was identified early. The risk was calculated. The decision to proceed was deliberate. The report names roles, not intentions. It outlines how warnings were raised, how responsibility was deferred, and how removing Kira's position was treated as a solution rather than a risk. The language is restrained, but the implications are severe. By noon, the company's board issues a statement accepting the findings in full. 2 more executives are removed. Legal counsel resigns the same afternoon. The restructuring announced weeks earlier is now reframed as failure, not strategy. Clients react decisively. One announces immediate migration. Another demands revised terms and financial concessions. A third suspends its contract entirely pending further review. The licensing agreement keeps systems running, but trust evaporates faster than infrastructure can compensate. Internally, morale collapses. Engineers question whether they are being asked to maintain a system they no longer understand or control. Teams stop planning long-term work. The focus narrows to keeping operations stable 1 week at a time. Precision Systems responds publicly for the first time since the report's release. The statement is brief. It confirms commitment to stability, compliance, and transparent licensing. No mention is made of the former company. The absence is intentional. That afternoon, Kira receives confirmation that regulatory bodies have opened preliminary inquiries. They are not accusatory yet, but they are formal. Requests for documentation follow. Precision Systems provides everything within hours. The former company requests extensions. By evening, industry commentary shifts again. The narrative is no longer about one executive or one decision. It is about governance, accountability, and the cost of assuming innovation can be controlled without understanding it. Late that night, Kira reviews a message sent through counsel from the former company's board. They formally request a meeting to discuss long-term dependency reduction and potential collaboration beyond licensing. The request acknowledges fault without admitting it directly. Kira authorizes a response the next morning. The meeting will be considered after regulatory matters conclude. No timelines are offered. The story is no longer about a dismissal or even a crisis. It has become a case study unfolding in real time, and everyone watching understands that the consequences are still moving forward. The regulatory inquiries move faster than expected. Within days, formal notices are issued requesting interviews, system access logs, and internal decision records. The former company's legal team asks for time to prepare. The request is granted once, then denied. Inside the company, preparation turns chaotic. Documents are compiled under pressure. Old emails resurface. Approval chains reveal gaps that cannot be explained away. Every attempt to control the narrative creates new contradictions. At the same time, Precision Systems is asked to participate. The response is immediate and complete. Records are delivered in organized sets, development timelines clearly separated, ownership boundaries documented without ambiguity. The difference in readiness is noticed. Midweek, a closed briefing is held between regulators and the former company's board. The outcome is not announced, but the effect is visible. The board authorizes full cooperation and suspends several ongoing initiatives. Spending freezes are enacted. External consultants are brought in to stabilize governance. Clients begin demanding written assurances tied to regulatory outcomes. Some include exit clauses. Others impose penalties for future disruption. Revenue forecasts are revised again, this time conservatively. Kira is kept informed through counsel, not meetings. She approves responses, reviews summaries, and continues expanding Precision Systems' roadmap. The system evolves beyond its original form, incorporating changes that the former company will never access under existing terms. Late Thursday, a leaked memo circulates online. It confirms that leadership at the former company discussed delaying patent filings to reduce internal scrutiny. The memo is not conclusive, but it raises enough concern to escalate inquiries. That evening, the board chair sends a final request for direct conversation. The tone is stripped of formality. It asks whether there is any path left to reduce exposure. The message is forwarded without comment. Friday brings another shift. One of the company's largest clients announces a long-term licensing agreement with Precision Systems directly. The move bypasses the former company entirely. Analysts call it a vote of no confidence. By the end of the day, the former company's leadership acknowledges internally that recovery is no longer the goal. Survival is. Kira ends the week reviewing a single report. It confirms what has become obvious. Control has not just shifted. It has settled, and it will not return. The first public enforcement notice is issued the following Monday. It does not accuse, but it restricts. The former company is instructed to submit quarterly compliance reports tied directly to its licensed use of the system. Any deviation must be disclosed immediately. The notice is procedural, but its meaning is unmistakable. Oversight has begun. Inside the company, leadership reorganizes again, titles change, reporting lines shift. The same people remain, but authority is fragmented. Decisions that once took hours now take weeks. No one wants to be responsible for the next mistake. Clients notice the hesitation. Contract negotiations slow, renewal discussions stall. Competitors step in quietly, offering stability and long-term guarantees. The market does not wait for internal recovery. Precision Systems releases its next update on schedule. Performance gains are verified independently. New integrations are announced. The system is no longer framed as a single product advantage, but as an industry standard in formation. Behind closed doors, Kira authorizes the creation of a separate advisory unit. Its purpose is narrow: monitor compliance, evaluate risk, and recommend future licensing adjustments. The former company is listed as high exposure. Midweek, the former company submits its first compliance report. Regulators flag inconsistencies within hours. Clarifications are requested. Legal responds cautiously. The exchange is noted. That afternoon, another executive resignation is announced. This one is unexpected. The reason given is personal. The timing suggests otherwise. Industry commentary grows sharper. Articles no longer ask what went wrong. They ask how it was allowed to continue. The company's name becomes shorthand for a governance failure no one wants to repeat. Late Thursday, Precision Systems finalizes a multi-year agreement with an international firm. The deal confirms long-term reliance on Kira's framework. The former company is referenced only indirectly as a current license holder. The omission is intentional. By Friday, internal surveys at the former company show declining confidence across departments. Retention efforts are announced, but they lack detail. Engineers continue leaving, one at a time, without coordination. Kira receives a brief update from counsel before ending the week. Regulators are satisfied with Precision Systems' cooperation. No further action is anticipated. The same cannot be said for the former company. The imbalance is complete now. One side moves forward under clarity and control. The other remains locked in response mode, reacting to consequences that no longer belong to the past. The shift becomes irreversible the moment the board announces a leadership overhaul rather than another adjustment. This time, it is not framed as transition or renewal. It is framed as correction. Multiple roles are eliminated outright. Authority is consolidated under an interim structure with a narrow mandate: stabilize operations, contain damage, cooperate fully. The announcement lands internally before markets open. Employees read it in silence. No one asks questions during the follow-up call. The absence of reaction says enough. By mid-morning, regulators issue a second directive. The former company must submit a detailed remediation plan within 30 days explaining how it will reduce dependency on licensed technology or demonstrate long-term compliance. The requirement is public. Investors take note immediately. Shares fall again, then hover. Confidence does not return. Inside the company, teams begin dismantling projects that rely too heavily on the licensed framework. Replacement plans are discussed, then abandoned. The cost is too high. The timelines are unrealistic. The expertise is gone. At Precision Systems, Kira authorizes a controlled release of a new technical roadmap. It outlines future iterations that will render older implementations increasingly obsolete. The document is precise and forward-looking. No threats are made. The implication is enough. The former company's interim leadership requests clarification through legal channels. They want to know whether future versions will remain compatible with their current license. The response is careful. Compatibility is not guaranteed. Licensing terms will be reviewed annually. That afternoon, an internal message circulates among employees at the former company. It warns against external commentary and reminds staff of confidentiality obligations. The message spreads anyway. Screenshots appear online within hours. Industry response is immediate. Commentators frame the situation as a cautionary sequence rather than an isolated incident. The company's name appears repeatedly, always in the same context. Late in the day, Kira receives confirmation that another competitor has signed a preliminary agreement. The system's reach expands again, further isolating the former company. As evening approaches, the board chair issues a final internal memo acknowledging that previous leadership decisions created the current situation. The memo avoids names. It avoids apologies. It confirms reality. There is no recovery plan outlined, only containment. Kira reviews the update and closes the file. What remains is not negotiation or correction, but time. And time is now moving in only one direction. The offer arrives just after midnight, routed through legal channels and marked confidential. It is no longer defensive. It is not even strategic. It is an attempt to stop further erosion. The former company proposes a long-term partnership, expanded licensing fees paid in advance, and a public statement acknowledging contribution without detailing circumstances. The language is careful. The urgency is not hidden. By morning, Precision Systems has already reviewed it. The conclusion is unanimous. The proposal does not change dependency. It only delays exposure. Kira authorizes a measured response, declining the partnership and reaffirming existing licensing terms. No counteroffer is included. The reply reaches the former company before noon. Within an hour, an emergency board session is scheduled. The agenda is not shared. The outcome is visible anyway. The company's general counsel resigns effective immediately. An interim replacement is appointed the same day. Markets react again, not sharply but decisively. Analysts downgrade expectations. Coverage shifts from recovery potential to asset preservation. The company's future is no longer discussed in growth terms. Inside the organization, instructions are issued to reduce external commitments. Hiring freezes expand. Vendor contracts are reviewed for exit clauses. The focus narrows further, from survival to endurance. That afternoon, a regulatory update confirms that the remediation plan must include leadership accountability measures. The requirement is explicit. Names are requested. Timelines are defined. Silence is no longer an option. Precision Systems releases a short statement confirming continued cooperation with regulators and reaffirming system stability for all licensed partners. The message is factual and final. It reassures everyone except the one company that can no longer claim certainty. Late in the day, Kira receives confirmation that another senior engineer from the former company has accepted an external role. The knowledge drain accelerates quietly. There is no announcement, no farewell. By evening, internal communications inside the former company shift tone. Messaging emphasizes resilience and commitment, but avoids specifics. Employees stop forwarding the emails. A final message arrives from the board chair, this time acknowledging that the offer was an attempt to preserve relevance rather than rebuild trust. The message asks whether any future collaboration remains possible. Kira authorizes the response without delay. Future collaboration will depend on demonstrated compliance, independent governance reform, and time. No exceptions. The message closes the last remaining informal channel. What remains now is not negotiation or leverage. It is consequence, unfolding at a pace the former company can no longer influence. The remediation plan is submitted on the final day of the deadline window. It is thick, technical, and cautious. It outlines internal controls, revised approval chains, and future dependency reduction goals that stretch years into the future. Regulators acknowledge receipt without comment. The silence is not reassuring. Within 48 hours, follow-up questions arrive. They are precise and difficult. Why were warnings ignored? Who approved the delay? Who benefited from the decision to remove oversight rather than fix exposure? The plan does not answer these questions. It only redirects them. The board meets again, this time without advisors present. The discussion lasts hours. When it ends, 3 additional executives are removed from operational authority. Their titles remain temporarily, their control does not. The announcement is released quietly after market close. Investors notice anyway. Another downgrade follows. Credit conditions tighten. The company's ability to maneuver shrinks again. At Precision Systems, Kira reviews a parallel report. It confirms that the newest system iteration will introduce architectural changes incompatible with earlier licensed versions unless upgraded under revised terms. The rollout is scheduled. Notifications will be sent in phases. The former company receives the preliminary notice 2 days later. The language is neutral. Continued compatibility will require renegotiation at the next annual review. No guarantees are offered. Internal response is immediate. Engineers attempt to model transition scenarios. Every path leads back to the same constraint. They do not control the roadmap. Clients begin asking direct questions. Can the company guarantee continuity beyond the current licensing cycle? Can it match the performance improvements now publicly documented elsewhere? Leadership provides conditional answers that satisfy no one. By midweek, 2 long-term clients announce partial migrations. Not exits, yet, but preparation. The message is unmistakable. Kira authorizes the next phase of expansion without delay. Additional hires are approved. Investment increases. The system's direction accelerates. Late Thursday, regulators request a second remediation submission addressing leadership accountability directly. The request is not framed as optional. The former company's board responds by initiating formal separation agreements with remaining legacy executives. The process is contained. The outcome is irreversible. Kira receives confirmation of the request through counsel and authorizes full cooperation if needed. No intervention is offered. None is required. By Friday evening, the company that once believed it could quietly remove a risk has become an example cited in internal governance trainings across the industry. The transformation is complete, not because of a single decision, but because every attempt to delay reality only made the consequences heavier when they finally arrived. The second remediation request changes everything. This time, it is not about process or structure. It is about responsibility. Regulators ask for names, decision paths, and justification. The deadline is short. Extensions are not mentioned. Inside the former company, the board understands the shift immediately. This is no longer a compliance exercise. It is an exposure event. Legal prepares summaries, HR prepares records, silence becomes impossible. The response is submitted on time. It is precise, restrained, and unavoidable. Senior leadership decisions are outlined clearly. The sequence is documented. The choice to remove oversight instead of correcting risk is acknowledged as a failure of judgment. Within days, regulators confirm receipt and announce next steps. Individual interviews will follow. External enforcement is now likely. Markets respond again, but differently this time. The reaction is not panic, it is acceptance. Analysts revise expectations downward without surprise. The company's future is no longer debated, it is priced in. At Precision Systems, Kira receives confirmation that regulatory attention has shifted away from licensing partners. The distinction is clear. Cooperation has consequences, delay has costs. She approves the final phase of integration for the next system release. The update introduces capabilities competitors cannot replicate quickly. Adoption accelerates. New contracts are signed quietly. Meanwhile, the former company begins preparing public disclosures tied to regulatory outcomes. Language is debated. Accountability is softened where possible. The effort does not change what is already documented. One by one, long-term clients announce decisions. Some exit, some reduce scope, none expand. Internally, the company stabilizes at a lower level. Operations continue. Systems run, but ambition disappears. Every decision is filtered through risk avoidance. Late in the week, the board chair submits formal notice of departure. The announcement cites completion of transition duties. No successor is named. Kira receives the update without comment. The event no longer alters strategy. The outcome has already settled. By the end of the week, industry commentary shifts tone again. The story is no longer about failure. It is about replacement. New standards form around what Precision Systems now provides. The old structure remains standing, but its influence is gone. What once dominated quietly exits the center of the market, not with collapse, but with erosion that cannot be reversed. The enforcement notice arrives without ceremony. It is published on a regulatory site early Monday morning, embedded among routine disclosures. It confirms violations of governance obligations, failure to act on identified risks, and material oversight lapses. Financial penalties are imposed, compliance conditions are extended, the language is controlled, the impact is not. Within hours, the former company issues a statement accepting the findings. There is no denial, there is no challenge. The response acknowledges mistakes and commits to corrective action. Markets react briefly, then settle. The result was expected. What was not expected is the secondary effect. Insurance providers revise coverage terms, credit agencies reassess exposure. Several long-standing agreements are reopened under force review clauses. The company is not collapsing, but it is shrinking again. Inside the organization, communication becomes minimal. Leadership focuses on execution only. No new initiatives are approved. Everything that is not essential is paused indefinitely. Precision Systems releases its quarterly update the same day. Growth exceeds projections. Licensing revenue outpaces product revenue for the first time. The system's influence is now measurable across sectors. Analysts highlight the shift clearly. Control has consolidated elsewhere. That afternoon, Kira authorizes publication of a technical paper detailing the system's evolution. The paper is factual and restrained. It documents development decisions, architectural trade-offs, and future direction. It also establishes authorship beyond dispute. The former company is referenced only in citations. Midweek, a final request arrives through counsel. It asks whether any relief or restructuring support might be offered in exchange for long-term alignment. The request is not desperate. It is resigned. The response is brief. Existing agreements will be honored. No additional concessions are available. By Friday, the former company's leadership announces the conclusion of its remediation phase. Oversight structures are in place. Reporting continues. The statement avoids future promises. Internally, employees begin adjusting expectations. Careers shift. Teams stabilize around maintenance rather than innovation. At Precision Systems, Kira meets with her advisory unit to finalize long-term licensing policy. The framework is approved without objection. It locks in control for years. The reckoning is over now, not because justice was dramatic, but because outcomes have settled into permanence. What remains is not conflict, but consequence that no longer needs to be enforced. 6 months later, the industry no longer reacts to updates from the former company. Announcements are noted, not discussed. Earnings calls pass without surprise. The business functions, but it no longer shapes direction. The shift is complete. Clients who remained renegotiate quietly. Contracts are shorter. Commitments are conditional. Every renewal includes exit language that did not exist before. Trust, once lost, is replaced with caution. Regulatory oversight continues on schedule. Reports are filed. Reviews are conducted. No new violations appear, but the conditions remain. Compliance has become routine, not corrective. The cost is steady and permanent. Inside the company, leadership stabilizes under a reduced mandate. Risk committees grow. Innovation budgets shrink. Decisions are defensive by design. The system runs, but it does not evolve. Precision Systems moves differently. New licensing agreements are finalized across multiple regions. The framework is integrated into platforms the former company once dominated. The market does not frame this as competition. It frames it as transition. Kira authorizes the release of the next system update without announcement. Performance metrics circulate internally first, then appear in third-party benchmarks. The results speak without explanation. Industry coverage shifts again. Case studies replace headlines. Conferences reference the sequence as an example of what happens when ownership is assumed rather than secured. Names are mentioned less often. Outcomes are emphasized. Late one afternoon, Kira receives a summary report from counsel confirming that all outstanding matters related to the former company are closed. No further actions are pending. Licensing continues under the existing framework. Oversight remains in place. She acknowledges the report and files it away. The chapter is finished. That evening, a message arrives from a former colleague, not seeking help or explanation. It simply states that the system is still running, but everyone knows who controls it now. Kira does not reply. The market has already answered the question that message implies. The company that once believed it could quietly remove risk now operates under conditions defined by someone it underestimated. The influence has moved. It has settled. And it is no longer negotiable. 1 year after the dismissal, there is no anniversary announcement, no public reflection, and no statement marking the change. The industry does not need reminders. The outcome is already embedded into how decisions are made. The former company releases its annual report quietly. Revenue is stable but reduced. Growth projections are conservative. The language emphasizes resilience and discipline. Innovation is mentioned sparingly. No reference is made to leadership decisions that shaped the year. The silence is deliberate. The licensing agreement remains active. Fees are paid on time. Compliance reports are submitted without incident. The system continues to operate, but it no longer defines the market. It follows standards set elsewhere. Precision Systems announces its next phase without drama. The framework evolves again, extending beyond its original scope. New partners sign on. Existing ones expand usage. The structure Kira designed now supports products she never intended it to power, yet it adapts without strain. Internally, the system is no longer treated as a breakthrough. It is infrastructure, essential, expected, controlled. Kira reviews the final quarterly briefing of the year. Metrics confirm what has been clear for months. Market position is secure. Licensing dependency is balanced. Regulatory attention is minimal. The system's authorship is undisputed. A short internal note circulates that afternoon confirming long-term strategy alignment. No urgency, no warning, just confirmation. Later that evening, Kira receives one final update from Council. The former company has completed all required oversight conditions. The case is officially closed. No further reporting is required beyond standard compliance. She acknowledges receipt and deletes the message. There is nothing left to resolve. The company that once removed her name from its narrative now operates under terms defined by it. Not through confrontation, not through revenge, but through structure that cannot be undone without dismantling what remains. Kira closes her workspace for the night and prepares for the next cycle. The system will continue evolving. The market will continue adjusting. None of it depends on acknowledgement anymore. The story ends where it always truly began, not with dismissal or exposure, but with control quietly returning to the person who understood the foundation long before anyone else realized it mattered. You have reached the end of the text.